What's up in War Eagle, everybody? You got Ike Jones, and we are in here today on the Midweek Rapport. We're going to talk about the coaching carousel that is happening around college football. Have all of the changes in all of the things involving college football ruined the game of college football and the prospects for keeping quality coaches? We'll also give you a little Auburn basketball when we get into this stuff. Let's get straight into your Midweek Rapport. We are in here. Midweek Report brought to you by the folks over at the Opelika Rage Room at 1510 2nd Avenue, Opelika, Alabama. Make sure that if you all are needing to get some frustrations out about whatever, get over to the Rage Room down there in Opelika. Or if you're in the Birmingham area, you can check them out there at 2616 7th Avenue South in Birmingham. The Rage Room has your ability to let out your frustrations in a healthy way, so you're not breaking your own stuff. Because I know that is a thing when you are dedicated to sports like we are. You tend to want to break stuff. So, hey, Rage Room lets you do that in a very healthy way. I'm here joined by my guy, B. Will. Dylan Lark from the College Loop is in here with us as well tonight. We are going to be talking a little bit about college football and the landscape of college football and all of the things that are happening with a bunch of departures from a lot of different coaches all around the landscape. Before we get into the conversation, please help us by sharing the content out there on social media at the War Report when you do that. If you can, give us a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And, in order to help us continue to do things that we do, you can be part of the Green Name Gang. You can join and get a membership to the War Report, and that helps us keep the lights on, kind of literally and figuratively. Like, it helps pay bills so we can keep the lights on, and it helps us continuing to do this kind of content for you guys all throughout the week. You can gift a membership if you're already a member, and somebody can get a free month of membership on you. And make sure you're tuning in to all the folks in the podcast land. The War Report Podcast Network is the Auburn Express, Uptempo Podcast, College Loop, and Just a Sec Pods. And all of those people are doing really great work for Auburn sports. A litany of Auburn sports voices. Auburn has a football team, of course. Auburn has a basketball team, of course. But Auburn has a lot of other different sports. And, we at the War Report, we kind of major on the football and basketball stuff. But if you want to talk Auburn baseball, you want to talk Auburn softball, College Loop and the Uptempo Podcast got y'all covered over there, man. So if you're fans of those two sports and you don't feel like you're getting enough of that content, I got two really good podcasts and YouTube channels for you, and that is the College Loop and the Uptempo Podcast to check out. You guys make sure that you lock in with them. All right, let's get into the conversation, though. Coaching carousel all over college football.
Yeah.
Is it becoming a problem is the question that we want to ask. Of note from here at Auburn, of course, is Jeremy Garrett recently leaving the Auburn football program to head to Jacksonville as the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line coach. But Auburn's not the only place that has been plagued by coordinators, head coaches, analysts all over college football are leaving to go to NFL programs, and a lot of them are talking or stating it's really due to burnout, right, from what the college game has turned into, right? When you think about coaches like Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan, that's a Michigan program that just won the national championship, and he was like, I'm good. I'll holler at y'all. Now, of course, there may be some other extenuating circumstances around things that may be happening to that program that helped with that, but I guarantee you that decision was made a lot easier by some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. Ryan Grubb, who was supposed to be the offensive coordinator for Alabama, was like, yeah, that's cool and everything. From a team that went again to the national championship game, he was going over to one of the top programs in the country as the offensive coordinator. And he was like, I'd rather go to the NFL. What do we think about the landscape of college sports right now and what it's doing to college coaches? How you guys feeling about it? Anybody can jump in.
I mean, the NIL it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. You're getting guys who are willing to commit. Looking at Florida having to deal with all the stuff they're having to deal with right now. Tennessee's having to deal with stuff with NIL stuff against the NCAA. It's just a lot of trouble that the NCAA could have just stopped by having just simple rules in place, because now we'll get into a lot of the other coaches that are dealing with this as well. But I've never seen a head coach just kind of give up on a program in January. And I'm talking Boston College's coach is who I'm referring to, Jim Harbaugh. He's been trying to go to the league for the past 5 years. But Boston College's coach kind of just gave up on his team because he was like, I'm tired of trying to outbid Clemson. I'm tired of trying to outbid Virginia for all these guys. I just want to be able to recruit the guys that I want and coach football, because with NIL kind of being the rich get richer ideology, you kind of fall behind if you don't have the money. You have Boston College, who is a Power 5 school, but they have to recruit the same level as G5 schools do because they don't have Clemson money. They don't have Florida State money. They don't have Miami money. So it's just kind of something that if you just had them all kind of digging out of the same pot instead of having boosters and deals kind of come into the university themselves, it could easily be fixed. But yeah, it's definitely a problem right now.
I mean, so easily be fixed. Let me let B. Will chime in because I want to come back to solutioning here in just a minute. Because tonight, the War Rapport Network is going to fix college football. That's what our goal is tonight. We're going to fix the entire system, and then we're going to send this over to the powers that be, and they're going to be like, I never considered that. That's a really good idea. B. Will, what's the problem?
Oh, well, the problem is that NIL is completely unregulated, and it's really just a sleeker legal way to get money into college players' pockets and their families' hands, which is not the problem. The problem is not that it's going to the players and their families. The problem is that there's no guardrails on it whatsoever. So anybody can get money, and that will leave a lack in some programs. Other programs, you got the money, you can have a lot better, not only player roster, but your staff will be better. This is something that once Alabama got rolling under Nick Saban, they were benefit from ahead of other people, which is more coaches, more analysts. True. Way before NIL became a thing. You can't spend it on players, cool, but I can have 3 guys breaking down film for me, and you got 1 breaking down that team's film because I got more money than you. College football has never been an even playing field. I would argue that now it's still not an even playing field. Some people are going to get up, but some people are also going to drop down. Like the example Dylan gave about Boston College. If you don't have the money, you're not going to get quality players unless you are just unreal scouting and you can put together a team of FCS players, because you have to go from 1 rung down is what you have to do. Mm-hmm. So whoever's recruiting 1 rung below you, if the people on your rung are scooping up all the talented players, you got to go 1 rung down, scout extremely well, and pull them up. And I can imagine that is a tiring, exhausting game. Yeah. You have to. There's just no way for anybody to completely recruit at a comparable level to your peers if you don't have the money of your peers. NIL with no guardrails is why it's going so far off the tracks.
Yes, I mean, so, as far as here is what Coach Hugh Freeze had to say about the entirety of the process. He says that I think our calendar is extremely messed up. I don't think it's good for high school recruiting, portal recruiting, managing your own team, getting ready for bowl prep. I think our calendar needs a serious look at for what's best for our game. It's hard for any of us to truly manage all of it, truthfully. So Coach Hugh Freeze, and this was right around the time when they were, early signing day, trying to get ready for the bowl game, all of those things. He's like, man, how's somebody supposed to do this job, bro?
Yeah.
How are we supposed to do this job with the way the calendar's set up? The transfer portal, early signing day, like coaches just don't get a break. And it's exhausting. If you're a college coach in the NFL, you actually get an off season. You get a time, even if it's only a month, you get time to go and chill for a minute. The way the transfer portal is right now, the way that, like guys can enter the transfer portal pretty much whenever they want to now. When do you get to take a break as a college coach between recruiting, game planning, and figuring out the transfer portal? And like you said, B. Will, with all of these staffs ballooning, now you have to figure out how to manage people internally on your staff. So what's the solution? How do we get to a place where we actually have collegiate football be, listen, we're just talking about football. Basketball's got to be crazy with their stuff right now. Yeah. But what's the solution here? Well, you guys, we're going to give some ideas for them. How we fix it? What's the problem and how do we fix it?
I think it's as easy as trying to, like what Hugh said about changing the schedule. We talk about early signing day. Early signing day is no longer early signing day.
Right.
There's signing day and then there's late signing day. Because then you're talking about, like, you look at Ryan Williams. I know he didn't sign with Auburn, but it was like, dang, he didn't sign on signing day. No, he's actually going to go sign on signing day. We just expect everyone to sign on national signing day or early signing day. But you don't have a chance. Once you're always recruiting the same players. You were recruiting high schoolers to sign with your team, and you're immediately, right after they pen comes off the paper, you're immediately recruiting that player to stay with your team.
Right.
It's no longer about a simple matter of, I stay with us, you're signed, stay, like you usually got back in the days before the craziness of the transfer portal. Because now you have teams like Iowa who kind of got outed by Caden Proctor for tampering midseason for, like, hey man, you're struggling, but you know what?
Man,
why not?
Shut up. Well, you just got why are you talking? Go ahead, my bad.
But if you spread it out, don't put bowl season, transfer portal opening, and early signing day in the same month, because you have coaches who are trying to game plan and recruit at the same time while also trying to get ready for Christmas. Like you have family time, team time, and recruiting time all in the same month. If you just spread it out a little bit, and don't give teams the opportunity to if a coach leaves, sure, why not? I understand it, but at a certain point, you've got to put a stop on when teams could enter the portal, because I don't really care that happened in Alabama, but for like Michigan, Jim Harbaugh left, and then all of a sudden it was open season for them, and they couldn't bring anybody in. So you're kind of just screwing everybody just because your coach tried to, for Harbaugh's sake, went for a better opportunity to go to the NFL. You're ruining these opportunities for these coaches, because like Boston College's coach just kind of got tired of it, got up and left. And now Boston College is up for grabs. It's just turned into NFL free agency at this point.
Well, of course, Bill O'Brien took the Boston College job. He left Ohio State's OC position to take the Boston College job. Then Chip Kelly left the USC head coach position to take the Ohio State offensive coordinator job. It's ridiculous. But I'm going to agree with you on the schedule. The only thing that actually makes any sense is to let the football season play out completely, championship included, like not the regular season, all postseason games play out, then the transfer portal opens. And I know that pushes back signing day, because you want to be able to, I think it's okay if signing day still happens in early mid-December, but you don't need to have to worry about.
I think they just need to have the one, though, right? Like, I don't know what the point of the second signing day is anymore.
Because some kids don't. I guess you could.
Well, I'm not saying it only needs to be earlier. I'm saying you need to push it back so that they only have one. Why do you have an early signing day and a late? Like, let it be like in January.
It's the pageantry.
Because you have to be able to, if you want to start in the spring, you have to be able to enroll by the spring. So you have to make that decision before then.
Yeah, man. I understand that they're wanting to get these kids in as freshmen earlier and earlier, man. But let them finish high school, man. Like, you're affecting high school football at that point in time too.
I mean,
like,
yeah.
Let kids be high school kids until the end of their, like, some of these kids aren't even getting to enjoy the end of their senior year because they're already moving on and they're on campus before their senior year ends, man. Like, let them be high school kids for as long, because listen, man, hey, bro, life, you're not going to get that back. the last days of your high school year, you ain't gonna get none of that back, man.
Yeah, but I mean, how much you look back at high school, be like, oh man, what a magical time.
A lot of people do. I don't care nothing about
I
it, but
don't
I'm saying
either,
there's a lot of people that absolutely remember high school as a magical time. So, like,
I mean, okay.
You also got some of the money aspects of it. You have kids not
the
even
money's
not,
the biggest aspect. Let's be
not
clear.
well, them not ignoring the end of their senior year, but you have some players who are just completely ignoring their junior year going in straight into college as like a 16, 17-year-old. And that's also kind of messed up because let the kids graduate high school at the bare minimum. Don't just have them reclassify. I feel like there should be some kind of rule against the reclassification of a high school player rather than and this could just be me being salty about Ryan Williams, but I don't feel like
man, hey, man, he don't want to come here anyway. It's all good. It's all good.
But class 2025 guy turns to class 2024 guy. What's the transcript look like? Come on, there's no way he graduated a year early in high school.
It can happen. We actually Birmingham, Alabama. I went to Ramsey High. Ramsey Rims. Everybody out there. We didn't have a football team, by the way, so that's how old I am. We split up the senior. By the time you got to your senior year, you didn't have a whole day of classes to take in the first semester and second semester. So we got out of school halfway at like noon every day of our senior year. So we absolutely, and that's before we're not talking about because we're athletes. We're just kids and we got all our classes and we got all our credits. And we could have taken like an extra elective just because, but it would have been, there was nothing you need for graduation anymore. So you absolutely can finish in 3.5 years. So I think that's fine because it gets you on campus. And honestly, as somebody who needs, we need more talent in here. We need an influx of this young, great high school talent. Yes. Let them get here in January so they can start spring camp. So we
haven't fixed anything yet. What are we going to do to change this calendar?
Okay, so that's what I was. Okay, so I was getting to it. Okay, we are going to not allow any transfers to happen. None. The portal doesn't open until after the national championship game.
Okay,
that's when it opens. It is a 30-day window. Yes, that means. Now I'm rethinking this already because you miss sign up. You miss the start of the next semester at your next school.
Yep. So you can't get in there in spring for the next school if you're not letting them transfer before that window enters. Because just entering the transfer portal is one thing, but you have to figure out what school you're going to, get registered at that school, and like that's a lot of stuff that's got to happen in a short amount of time. And you're not really giving time for the schools to re-recruit guys unless you're letting they can announce an intent to hit the transfer portal earlier than that, which they could always have done. They aren't officially in. So like, how do you figure all that stuff out?
Well, don't you already have students that are student athletes who are already doing that? Because if your coach leaves in January, you're already in classes. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to transfer out anyway. So you might as well.
It does limit where some people can go because there have been cases where they were primed to go to one spot, but they couldn't because that school's semester had already started. So you're just screwed. Like you can't get into that school. If you had done it discreetly, somebody would have made a way. But everybody knows that you just jumped in the portal yesterday and it's February. You're not going anywhere, so you're stuck.
Yeah, because of the school aspect of it, you can't actually leave because it's not like you can't just not be in school. You could just not be in school, but like in order to maintain your eligibility, scholarship path towards your progress towards your degree, all of that stuff, right? We can't just ignore the school portion of it. And I think that's the thing that everybody wants to skip past is that there's actual school that has to happen amidst all of this other stuff, or it's really truly NFL junior at that point in time. If kids aren't going to get degrees, then that's what it becomes.
So what if everybody stops faking like it's about school and we solve the actual problem, which is you treat them like employees. You create a salary cap for every program, and that will eliminate some of the advantage that the big spenders have that the smaller schools don't. They're employees, so they have contracts, and when they have contracts, they're not getting in the portal at the end of the year. Why? You got the contract, buddy. You're not going anywhere. So at least when a coach is approaching the postseason and you're thinking about your roster, you don't have to wonder, well, is my all conference D tackle just going to jump in the portal because somebody offered him more money? No, he's not. Not this year. Next year, his contract to be up, and he's going to go somewhere else, or he'll stay for one more for his senior season or something. Fine.
So you're saying remove the amateur status from them and let them be professional contracted athletes in college.
Yes, that is the only way. Now, ironically, that's the only way to actually get some control. If you're going to let them get paid value for what they bring to the university, and let's be clear here, between the NFL and the NBA, there's a split of revenue that's like somewhere between 47-53, and like I think the NBA is like 49-51. Players get 49, and they split that. They split that as far as how much revenue is reserved for salary caps for teams, and how much when teams just get a big check at the end of the year. Like NFL teams, you get like 50-something billion dollars. The NFL says, here you go. Wasn't it a great year? So they get that money. The players get that money, but it's split up among salary and everything that you sold, your jersey sold in the store, and all this money comes to you that way. Players, I know we kind of gripe about, they were trying to pay him $300,000 a year in NIL. Listen, they're not even getting close to the value that they bring to these campuses. What you pay for in tickets and concession sales and paraphernalia sales, none of that is even close. The salaries that these kids are getting through NIL is not even close to 50% of what they bring in for these colleges. These numbers are published usually. If you want to know what the athletic department was making, what football revenue was, what players are getting, is not even close. And the reason universities would hate this is because all this NIL money is not coming out of the university's pocket. If they are employees, these universities have to find a way to pay players. They do not want to do that. You got to have insurance for everybody.
Right.
You got to have benefits for everybody. I mean, they have some benefits for these players.
Yeah, they have some sort of like insurance that they can take out for. Well, anyway, continue. Yeah.
Yeah. But because of what labor laws are, if we acknowledge that these guys are doing work, then you have to treat them like employees. And all of a sudden, your college players that just cost NIL money, which you can get from fans and all your rich donors, and you don't pay a dime for, now you pay them salary, which is expensive. And on top of that, you have to pay for their benefits and their well-being, which is expensive as well. Now it's incredibly cumbersome to have a competitive football program. But you will be able to control who you get, who leaves, and when much better than you would otherwise.
So the problem, in your opinion, is the liberty in which the players have to move about.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So here's where I have a problem with restricting player movement without restricting, because my issue has always been that I like the transfer portal being, I think that it went too far with removing the one-time transfer rules where you don't have to sit a year if you do the second transfer. I think that was the step too far, because I do think that kids should have the young men and ladies, whatever, should have an opportunity to leave if they made the wrong choice or it just didn't work out the way that you thought it was going to be. But I don't like putting restrictions on the players that you're not going to put on the coaches, right? If the coaches can just decide tomorrow, hey, this ain't working out for me, I'm up and out. This man, Ryan Grubb, Ryan Grubb left Washington to follow Kalen DeBoer to Alabama, went to a booster meeting and was like, yeah, I'm here with y'all. And a week later was gone again, bro. There's no player in collegiate football that could have gotten signed out of the transfer portal, reported to whatever, like an actual thing that you're required to do under your contract, and be like, yeah, I'm finna be y'all new quarterback, and then bounce for another school a week later. You can't do it. You can't do it. And the coaches are under contracts.
That's a different situation, because honestly, coaching liberties with their contracts between them and the school, that's way out of hand. Like Jimbo Fisher had a contract that paid him however many dozens of millions of dollars if he was bad enough to get fired. I don't know who decided paying all that money was a good idea if you're not good at your job, but coaches, they're running a racket. All right. I don't know how it got this bad, but I agree with you. What they probably should do is you can leave and go whenever. You're paying all that money back. Like, you're paying the value of this contract, even if you didn't finish it. You signed for $20 million for 4 years. Okay, you want to go there? Fine. Pay me $10 million, pay half of it.
Well, which is why they have buyout language in a lot of these contracts, right? So if you're going to leave and go to another job, then somebody needs to buy out the remainder of this contract or a portion of that contract, or the coach has to give that. That buyout language exists in a lot of these places, which is also why places like Auburn are left on the hook when coaches get fired, because they're like, hey, wait a minute, you promised me 5 years of this contract. I've only worked 2 of them. So what's my money, bruh?
Right. Yeah.
I will say, if you want to keep the academic level of it, I mean, you're giving these kids free rides to prestigious colleges, which
that's a benefit. That's a benefit.
And you're
the
also
same way you work at Microsoft, you get free Microsoft Word for life or whatever. You work for a college, you get free tuition. If you want to work for Auburn now, you get free tuition. That's a benefit.
And it's just, it annoys me to a degree to see those players get the free education, which I understand. Yes, give it to them. But also, that's also, if you transfer within 2 years, you just cost maybe a couple of kids who had academic scholarships. You affected those too, because you had to let these guys in some way. So it affects both ways. I think the scholarship should count as like the contract.
Which they technically are contracts, but they have to get renewed every season, right? So, like, I mean, but the contract is you play for our school, we pay for your school, right? And that's what the contractual portion is. As long as you remain eligible, we'll continue to pay your scholarship.
Right.
But I look at it that way. I was like, if you're going to give these players free rides, if they're going to be getting jersey sales, a portion of it, not all of it, probably.
No, they shouldn't get all of it. They didn't. I mean, the value is in there anyway. I don't want to get into all that, but yeah.
There should be a level of, and it comes down to the coaching. And I think about the NCAA 14 level of it, because like part of your recruiting for NCAA 14 is coach trust, coach stability. You have to be at this. You have to be at the school for so long.
Yeah,
that does come into play. But if you have a coach that's been there a while, and you just give up on the team halfway through, and it goes back to, like, look at Alabama years ago. Like, they had 5 stars who signed with Alabama just to be the backup for 3 years, then ball out in their 4th year and get drafted. I'm looking at Josh Jacobs. He was a perennial backup for Alabama that had 1 year where he was a starter, balled out, and now he's a Las Vegas Raider, excuse me. But you don't have that with other schools nowadays. Alabama can't even keep players on their roster more than a year if they're not playing. Look at Antonio Kite. I think it's a great pickup for Auburn, but it was a guy who was a highly touted recruit. Nick Saban, the whole staff wanted to keep him, but he didn't get any playing time, and then he bounced. I believe he was he transferred out before Nick Saban retired, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it was after.
Was it after? Okay. Oh, man, I'm just speaking out of my butt then. But you have other players that do that. You don't get the same level of what's what I'm looking for here, commitment whenever a player announces their commitment. It's the same way in high school realm. You get a guy who will commit his senior year, and then he'll flip his commit, and then he'll flip back, and then he'll flip this way, he'll flip that way. You didn't get that 6, 7, 8 years ago as much. It was not something that was that prominent. If a guy wanted to come to your school, odds are he was going to come to your school. But nowadays, NILs, I don't think we should be promising NIL money to a guy who's not stepped into the college realm.
Oh, so that I agree 100. Like, I think the NIL promissory thing for a kid who's never played a single down of football is insane, right? Like, so if we're talking about, like, because that's when we talk about salary caps, for instance, I do think that they should put more hard limits, because that's what happened in the NFL. They had a rookie salary wage cap where it's like, look, man, we're not going to be giving all this bread to some rookie player who might fizzle out in a couple of years. So I think that from an NIL standpoint, they probably need to look into something like that. The problem, again, with that is that NIL is really about the collectives are the only people that you can limit in that way. Because if somebody on their own, proves their own value in that way, and people want to pay for their jersey or paraphernalia and all that kind of stuff, that's fine. But from a collective standpoint, they have to put some sort of limitations on this, or it's going to be crazy. Yeah. Because I think they're just doing way too much wheeling and dealing with guys who haven't proven anything.
Yeah.
And it's making recruiting ridiculous. To Coach Freeze's point, it makes it hard for you to even figure out who's still in your boat when you're talking about trying to keep people out of the portal,
Right.
figuring out how to put recruiting classes together because people are putting NIL packages together for kids that hadn't even gotten there. Like, it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the solution is. We haven't actually come up with a solution here yet, by the way. I thought we were going to fix all the problems.
Solution. My solution is put the money on. Now, you got to take some money from the coaches, though. Now, that's going to be the thing.
I don't know if that works, though. The salary thing, I don't know if that works. I don't know if that works.
You get control. You can set the similar to free agency. Let's think about it. When NBA free agency is about to start, everybody knows because the coaches go to the players' house at midnight and they're waiting. So as soon as free agency starts, we're going to be the first people at your door, the first people on your phone. You know, everybody's had all this time to scout because the draft has happened. So you get your influx of new talent. That's happened. And then you wait, and now it's free agency because I know who you got in the draft. You know how the draft worked out. What new talent did you get? Did you fill your needs at point guard if it's the NBA? Did you fill your needs at quarterback or tackle or whatever? Well, didn't get it there, or I like what I got. Now let me fill the rest of my holes with free agency. All right. So now it's on me to go ahead and find these guys who are going to cost me more money. So I agree. You need to have an incoming. If you're coming from high school, there's a cap on how much you can earn. I don't care what your position is. That free agency model, it's been fine-tuned. It keeps players in place so you know who you have. If you are a detriment to the team, if you cut up, if you act out because you want to get released, you're going to get released, but you're not going to get any money. Because we're going to define what behavior should be and what you have to do to keep getting paid. You can put academics on that. I'm not completely upset with that to some extent, because I do think if you're going to put money in these guys' pockets, they have to have enough structure as young men to not go crazy. And that's something that they really have to work out to some extent.
I don't like turning it from amateur athletics. I mean, I don't know, man. Because again, you open up a whole other can of worms when you talk about folks that have to figure out like just workplace violations that you have to try to regulate and all that kind of stuff with guys who are, I don't know, man. I think that becomes crazy when you start getting into that sort of thing. And I don't know. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either.
I think an easy fix could just be, the NCAA doesn't recognize the college football playoff national champion. They recognize the FCS champion. At some point, the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, I don't want to say the ACC or Pac-12 because they're going to be null and void in a couple of years. But the SEC and Big Ten mostly have more power than the NCAA does. If the NCAA tries to come down on a big dog in the SEC is not going to let anything happen to one of their big players for winning a championship. That's just how it rolls. The SEC is probably the most powerful conference in the college football realm and college sports realm over the NCAA itself. It could be as easy as just, I don't want to like start a riot or anything, but overthrowing the NCAA because they don't recognize the champion. They're not doing anything and I just hit my mic. They're not doing anything to prevent this mess from happening.
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA created this by not taking action on a lot of this stuff way earlier than they did.
They're trying to fix it by going at Tennessee for spending NIL money on Nico. All of that. Yeah, however, I'll learn it whenever he actually proves to be good.
We know what you're talking about.
Nico. And nothing's going to happen because the NCAA, they don't have a backbone. They don't have a spine. All they are is a bunch of old dudes who are like, well, let's ruin someone else's life today. That's all they're good for, is just making people mad, and they don't do anything except do that. They don't set rules. They don't set parameters. They're like, oh, well, you got this recruited hamburger at McDonald's. Well, you're getting suspended for 6 games. Cool. That's all that they do. Yeah. If the SEC, if the Big Ten, they're already working towards it regardless, because SEC brought in Texas and Oklahoma. The Big Ten brought in and the Big 12 basically stripped all the teams from the Pac-12. These conferences are getting more powerful than the NCAA can control. What are you going to do to the Big Ten whenever they have Ohio State, Michigan, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington all in the same boat? What are you going to do with the SEC when they have, I think, 3 out of the top 5 highest earning colleges in terms of sports revenue? You can't do nothing to them. They don't have power over you anymore. If you get rid of the NCAA, let the conferences take over the monitoring of the NIL. Set salary caps for how much you can spend. Don't give
Dylan is advocating for states' rights right now. He's like, we don't overthrow the federal government. States' rights is what we want to go for.
The capital of the SEC resides in Birmingham, Alabama, not the NCAA. That is where that resides. But like Vanderbilt shouldn't be operating with one leg while Alabama has all four of their limbs. That's not how it should work. They're both Power 5 SEC caliber schools, and actually Vanderbilt's a better college than Alabama is. So technically, maybe Vanderbilt should have more money than Alabama does. Do that, please. But
that's not going to happen.
No team should be left in the dust if they are part of this conference. And that's not me wanting to say kick Vanderbilt out, because I do think Vanderbilt does a lot of things good in other sports. And academically, they bring up the entire GPA of the conference by a factor of 1. It's just something that the NCAA doesn't have power anymore. Give the conferences the chance to monitor their own teams. Set limits to what those teams, those conferences can spend. Don't give Bama, since they've won a championship in the past 10 years, $2 million more than you give Missouri, who Missouri might be better than Alabama next year. And Missouri's not getting this level of love from the media that Bama does, but Bama's going to get more money because of it. Give the conferences that chance.
When they distribute these checks, the conferences do, it's equal distribution among the SEC schools. This year, everybody got a $51 million check as a part of their distribution from their TV rights and in their bowl appearances and stuff like that. So that the after money is going to everybody. Vanderbilt won 2-3 games last year? $51 million. Thank you. Great doing business with you. So that's already happening. The part that we can't really control is if there is a salary cap, and to be clear, I'm talking about putting a salary cap on a team as employees of the university, not as NIL. There's no way to control it with NIL. So that's not going to work. But
so do you want a salary cap for coaches as well?
Yes. I want them to split if teams have to pay, if schools have to pay players, there won't be $10 million a year for a coach anymore. There just won't be. They'll have to eat some of that money because honestly, colleges can't afford to pay $10 million for a coach and then $1 million. Like, can you imagine what if he had come back, like Bryce Young won the Heisman, he came back the next year? Buddy, we renegotiate my contract. I promise you that. Caleb Williams, hey, I'm gonna cost you. What am I costing you out here in LA? $8 million. I'm costing you $15 million. I'm a Heisman winner. It's like I just put Grammy winner on my resume as a musician. I'm gonna cost more now. So when you do that, the universities are paying for other sports with football revenue. They're paying for it. Probably all stays in the athletic department, but it's funding a lot. You can't say, well, we got to pay players, so we're closing you down, women's volleyball. No, you can't do that unless you reformat Title IX. So you got to start taking from the coaches. And I think you probably should, honestly. I know the coaches have a hard job, but if you're going to make their job more manageable by controlling the schedule of everything that happens in college football, by controlling the turnover from the players, then why not go ahead and knock your salary down some? Because let's see how bad you want to win. You still need good players, right? Well, the salary cap, you're probably not going to get any coach that makes more than $5 million a year. I think they'll survive somehow. They'll scrape by with $5 million a year. I think they'll be fine. I'm talking about like Nick Saban. He retired now, but Nick, $5 million. You cool? Yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah, you cool with that. It's $5 million.
You told me I can't put 2 stories in my mansion? What are you talking about?
Man,
I need those $4 million. Come on, man.
Look, we need to get over into these comments because everybody's been weighing in on this, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back at you with the Midweek Rapport, brought to you by the Opelika Rage Room. This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. The Opelika Rage Room in Opelika, Alabama. The Rage Room is a place where anger and stress find their ultimate release. Call or text 334-777-6688 to set up a session today, or check them out online at opelikaRageRoom.com. Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com. Thank you to the sponsors of the War Report. Thank you to our members who are keeping us afloat out here in these War Report streets. If you want to join, go ahead and click that join button and you can decide what level you want to support. We appreciate everybody who does that. If you are a member and you want gift a membership, somebody can get a free month of membership on you, and we appreciate people who do that. We have a betting sponsor now. BetUS is out here helping those of you who enjoy sports betting get a little bit of something in your pocket if you pick correctly. Hit them up at BetUS. The link is down there in the description of the video. You get 125% sign-up bonus when you do it, and we appreciate those who support us in that way. As well, we have a sponsorship right now from our folks over at Manscaped. And if you enjoy, I don't know. I want to say enjoy grooming because that feels a little wrong to put it that way. But hit up manscaped.com using code rapport and
We're not judging.
You get 20% off plus free shipping when you do that at manscaped.com. They have great things to make sure that all of your body parts that need attention can get them. That is nose hair trimmers. They got ear trimmers. They got beard trimmers. They have, for your special place, they got trimmers. They have trimmers for every need out there. Getting the men together and make sure that you hit them up and use code rapport when you do that. And we definitely appreciate everybody who continues to support the War Report and the sponsors of the War Report. Let's get over into this comment section. And
if you're feeling a little ballsy, get Manscaped.
I like it, Dylan. I like it. Let's get over into this comment section. We'll start it off, of course, with the super chats. Ben Bloodworth super chats us and says, "Let it not be forgotten that the NCAA started all of this by handing out draconian punishments while profiting off of the very players they vilified." Yeah, I mean, this was exactly what happened, which was, we hadn't talked about it, but the NCAA, this is why the NCAA football game went away, right? They were like, listen, man, if y'all aren't going to pay these players, but you're going to keep, utilizing their likenesses, this isn't fair. This is absolutely unfair that somebody can go and play a video game and use my likeness and all this kind of stuff, and I get paid $0 from this. All of you schools can go out there and you can sell my jersey and you can put my face all over billboards and all this kind of stuff to bring more ticket sales and packed out arenas, 10,000 people out here, and I can't go get a sandwich because I'm broke. And if somebody pays for that sandwich for me, my school is now under the death penalty from the NCAA. It got crazy.
Yeah, and they took that amateur thing too far. The rules of what amateurism is and is not. It shouldn't have been like that in the first. Like, that was weird. There was I remember when I started working in undergrad, the person who hired me told me he had some football players that were working for him, so they had to work jobs. And he was like, we went to go get and somebody was giving out food at an event, and he was like, the football players had to go, nope. I can't accept this. We worked for your event. You're like, hey, you guys want some food? Because that's what people do. We got plenty left over. They're like, oh, no, I can't.
Right.
Like, that's stupid. That makes absolutely no sense. It made no sense.
Well, then you had players who got in trouble for selling their autographs, but Auburn had every school has this, but it's a fan day where they had to sit there for 3 or 4 hours just
signing stuff,
signing away,
and they were either giving it away, which not very often giving it away, or to people who paid to come to this signing event where you got this stuff, or they were going and selling this stuff to raise money for their programs. And, a couple of hours out of my day just sitting here signing autographs, I don't get nothing for that. Now they at least have to be like, hey, we'll give you $500 if you just come over here for a couple hours and sign some autographs. And they're like, I bet, all I got to do is sit here and write my name over and over again. I did that when in school for getting in trouble. I can get paid for it right now. All right, cool.
Right.
That's why I had no trouble with the Johnny Manziel stuff when I watched his documentary.
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel was out there fleecing though, bro.
Yeah.
Johnny was out there.
They had a whole thing going on though. But I have no issue with a guy. Johnny Manziel brought in more money for Texas A&M than anybody else has for Texas A&M. No matter what the boosters put in. No matter what his rich oil family brought in, he brought that money in. He should be able to make a little bit off of autographs. And for instance, if the NCAA games, you didn't even need to have their likenesses in the game. It was more of just they had for Shaun White, it would be quarterback 13.
Right.
It would just be it would just look like Shaun White. That was like the issue with NCAA. It was like, you don't need to put their likenesses in there. You don't need to put Peyton Thorne as a starting quarterback for Auburn. You could do quarterback.
Please don't. I don't want to see that either.
I'm starting off fresh with my Auburn dynasty whenever that game comes out. Walker White will be my guy, and I'm just starting all the freshmen. So we're gonna see how that works out. But you had those players who they should be making money because the school's making more money off of them.
Right.
That is exactly how that should be. Like I remember fan day for me in 2015, 2014. I was at the front of the line. I outran several adults trying to get Jeremy Johnson's autograph.
What a time.
Yeah, I love Jeremy Johnson. He's still one of my favorite players I've ever watched. I don't care what anybody else has to say. I love Jeremy Johnson. But he didn't make any money off of being the golden arm, future of Auburn football, Heisman front runner, going to take Auburn back to the championship. He didn't make any money by signing my football. But I think he should have, because I took up however much of his time. But the fans took up 3 hours of his day. And, his quarterback, he's right-handed. He's right-handed. You're making his hand sore. That's your guy. That's your quarterback of the future right there. You can't have him just out there for nothing in return.
Yeah.
Pay the kids.
Yeah, I am all in favor of them being able to take advantage of their likeness. I think it was long overdue, but it definitely the collectives, in my opinion, is what kind of made this an absolute crap show. Andrew Ackerman jumps in and says, I was at the basketball game night, incredible environment. We will get into talking about basketball here in just a minute, but thank you for that. Karen Parker, college coaches never get any time off. They're always recruiting. It's absolutely true, man. Listen, these coaches, I honestly don't know how they manage to have a real, how can you have a real family and deal with the stuff that they're dealing with? I don't know how that's a real thing.
Well, one way you do it, and Hugh Freeze has started to do this, and he's, obviously he learned from what the staff was in year one, is you pay a lot of people to only focus on bringing in new players, and you don't have to put your eyes on every potential recruit and transfer portal kid. You got
that helps the head coach, but the guys who have to do that recruiting all day and all year, that don't help them none.
It doesn't help them, but that's why you got so many more guys doing it. So now you don't have 4 guys who are your recruiting staff. You got 12 guys who are your recruiting staff, and it's spread out, I'll say more evenly, but you just got more bodies to do the watching that you used to have to do. And I don't know, I wonder how that works. That's actually a really good question that I want to ask somebody, whether it's at Auburn staff or some other staff. When you've got a director of recruiting, a director of transfer portal, a director of player relations, those are positions I don't know if they existed 10 years ago, because now there's so much movement that you have to have those positions, right? Yeah. Who does what? Who's the guys hey, look, you're going to watch every group of 5 team that plays in this conference. You watch those games over the course of the week. After the weekend, you're going to watch all those games and look for somebody that stands out that we can recruit that might be a gem. All right, you go. You're looking at the offense. You're looking at every offensive lineman from all those games. How do they split that up? Because that's a lot of work. You're talking about somebody had to have a beat on, even though he didn't work out. Shane Hooks, you look at his tape, right? They had just gotten in here. They had just signed the staff. The staff had just gotten here, and then they had to try to make some snap decisions about who was available within 2 or 3 months. How were you going to do that? You didn't even have a house. You just moved here. I have no idea how they did it. I see why he's got so many people working, recruiting, and development now. I feel like that's necessary, and that does some of the work for you, but you're still going to, maybe you, at the end of the year, all right, coach, we've narrowed it down to these 10 key players, and now the coach goes about making some decisions about what the staff has narrowed it down to. But otherwise, I don't, and you've got to have the bodies to get that done. What if you don't have the money for all that staff? You're screwed. Yeah. You're screwed.
Yeah, which is why a lot of teams are screwed. Tim the Toolman Taylor says, my man Grubb went to the booster party and dipped out the next day, took their O-line coach too. I wish I could shake his hand. Oh, man. Hey, but them players who the transfer portal closed on probably want to run them a fade real quick, though.
I didn't know that the O-line coach left too.
Yeah.
All right.
Tatiana jumps in. It's all about gambling players by money. What happened to the players coming because they love the team and the school? It's awful. Hate to break it to you, Tatiana. Players going to school because they love the team were few and far between. This is way before it was money involved. coming just because you loved the school. Most of the guys that was their story, most of them, not all, most of them that was their story, they either were a legacy, so they grew up on it, or they were some person who was like, if you were ranking the best players on your team, they probably was like number 30 or 40 on that list. Yeah. It ain't too many people who were truly talented who went places. Oh man, I just really loved that school. No, that has not been a thing since like the 70s, and I probably wasn't really a thing then.
I do think that once players get here, they play. If it's a good environment, if they're having some success, they grow to love.
They grow to love it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But
it's just not the reason why people come initially.
No.
No. Well, that's why you get every single 4 or 5 star recruit says the same few words every time they make their commitment for the next 3 to 4 years.
Right.
For the next 3 to 4 years. That means I want to be here. I want to be here until I'm able to go to the league. That is their goal.
Whatever the quickest route for me to get there is going to be, and this is the place I think can make that happen. But it wasn't. It was about the love of a program, right? Maybe because that program has been putting people in the league. It was about the love of a coach. But there are very few people who were like, I just really love the university. Nah, bro. Like that was like number 3 or 4 on their list. It wasn't, man, I'm just going, again, unless they were a legacy, it was very rare that was the case for a lot of these young men historically. Philip Coleman says NIL is changing coaching because this money a lot of these kids are making makes them feel entitled and not want to really put in work anymore. I think that's true. There's a level of entitlement that happens, but is that going to change because you put them on salary? They're going to feel even more entitled, aren't they, if they have to pay a salary to them?
Well, I think the entitlement comes anytime you start giving somebody something that is far and above what they had prior. I mean, honestly, a lot of it starts in high school probably. And if they're really, really good players, standout players, it might start in middle school, where people keep throwing things at them just to be good ball players. We know, like in the NBA and that whole circuit, like it happens way quicker because they're going to end up at their destination by 18, 19, some of them. So they get people to latch on to them, giving them what they want, telling them that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and just hoping and crossing their fingers that kid makes it, remembers them, and then starts giving them money and pulls everybody around them up. The entitlement is Hugh Freeze kind of talked about this at some point over the last year, but you're going for a certain type of player that is, get to know their family and like they actually like football. They like to do the work of football. They have a good attitude, and that's something that you can kind of scout. Now, if you want to do what Jimbo did and just say, I want all the highly rated players, yeah, you can get a bunch of people who have questionable work ethics and off-field issues, and you're going to end up with a melting pot of kids who are like that, which is why those kids didn't necessarily work out. But if you're careful about who you recruit and how you recruit them and why you recruited them, I think you can avoid some of that complacency. I don't think entitlement has to be the biggest issue necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it definitely is an issue. Let's see. Ant Robinson again says college football is becoming what everyone doesn't want, the NFL.
I love the NFL.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people love college because they felt like the pageantry and all that kind of stuff. It's taking away from what was different about college football. And so that's what people are saying when they say they don't want that stuff anymore, or they don't want it to be like the NFL, which is a bunch of kind of diva players who are in it just for the paycheck for the most part, and they're not in it to go out there. Because a lot of what you got as far as the effort and energy was because I ain't making nothing, and this is how I'm going to change my life is I need to show out every single day on this college campus, or otherwise I won't get to the big paycheck. If I'm getting the big paycheck in college, it does take away some people's ability to work hard because you already making money. What do I need to work hard for? The check is here right now.
Right. And that's why, what you do is you incentivize certain things, but you can do that as a school if you make them employees. Now I can say, well, here is the standard you have to live up to. Like in the pros, you miss those off-season workouts, miss that money. You late for practice, you missing money. Like everything is paid, and we don't think about it that way. We just, hey, hurry up, be on time for practice because it's the best thing for you. And we heard after the fact that when Gus was here, there was some like, I don't feel like it today, coach, and it worked. in the pros. That's why I like the pro model for a lot of reasons. You might have done it just for the good old gosh darn, I love being my best self. Yeah, okay. The people who are making the most money, every bit of their income is dictated by terms in a contract to make sure they act accordingly. I know we did it for the love of family and brother and school. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to make it part of why they're getting paid. Put it in the contract. Now, you want to be late? All right, you just cost yourself however much money. You want to be late again? You cost yourself how much you do it again? Now, legally, I can throw you off the team.
That feels very employer-employee, really good, blah, blah, blah. That hasn't stopped NFL players from being late all the time. And I don't know that you get to a solution that stops complacency by putting a paycheck at risk because of that. Like certain people are just internally motivated in a different way, and they don't care nothing about none of that stuff, right? And so if your motivation is money, yes, then it will affect how you show up in those areas. But if you're just not good at that stuff, making it about money isn't going to make you about good at that stuff. You just like if you are a trash human being, me paying you money is not going to make you stop being trash. It just won't.
Well, then very shortly you'll be able to separate from them because, again, contractually, if you act out of sorts,
that works, I guess. Here's my issue. We spend way too much time on this.
But it's fun.
We need a part 2 on
should
this.
They start doing base like salary levels, quote unquote, based on your year? Like
Yes.
Freshmen should be getting paid this amount, sophomores should be getting, and at that point, do you start adding like incentivizing it? Like if a freshman gets,
if you're going to
a
pay them,
freshman
you
gets
absolutely
1,000
should do that. Yes.
exactly. It's like if a freshman wide receiver, say Cam Coleman, becomes the first Auburn receiver in 60, 70 years. Not that far, but first receiver to hit 1,000 yards since enter whatever year that was, 1990, whatever. He should get paid more than the average sophomore should. But until that happens, he shouldn't be being paid more than a guy who's been here for 2 years, been working hard at it. He's like the starting right guard. Shouldn't be getting paid more than that. That's how that should be. Like Bryce Young should not have been getting paid more than, and this is going to sound dumb, but should not be getting paid more than Mac Jones from NIL.
Yes, he should. Yes, he should.
Before he stepped on the field?
Great.
Before he stepped on the field?
Before he stepped on the field?
Because he NIL-wise, Bryce Young was getting more attention than Mac Jones was, and Mac Jones was the presumptive starter. So I don't think you can just avoid the guys who have been there longer just because you have a Ferrari coming in that you presume is going to run like a Ferrari, but could run like a Volkswagen. You don't know. You can't just assume that. That's what the Jaden Rashada thing was such a dumpster fire at Florida, because Billy Napier promised money to a kid he doesn't even know what he can do yet, and he promised money he didn't have, and then
which is a whole other can of worms of like
now
that
something
Rashada
else.
thing. Like oh Lord, again, this conversation, we're not going to even talk about basketball at this point, but let's continue. Conservative Cowboy says, y'all think about the two, what do y'all think about, we'll end that conversation and we'll transition with this. What do you think about the 2 new coaches that got hired?
Are we talking about they were
Kenyatta
staff
and
members?
Yes,
Because they're not coaches technically.
yeah, correct. They're staff members, not
analyst
coaches.
and director of high school recruiting.
Okay,
Something like that.
So I mean, I'm assuming that we've been, again, staff beefing up on the recruiting and the people who are watching the players coming in and the other players around the country because it's necessary now. I have no way to know if this is going to be a fruitful endeavor. I assume that these players have been around the game. I know Kenyatta Watson's been around the game for a long time, and I assume that they know ball, that the coaches on this staff and the people on the staff know that they know ball, that they know players, they know what they're looking for when it comes to scouting players and getting the best players into your program. So I'm going to assume that this is a good hire. I think more people to put eyes on this is great because, again, if we want to look at the short notice pickups that Hugh Freeze had in year 1, did not pan out. So let's turn that over to some other people, get some more eyes on the talent around the country, and let Hugh Freeze coach offense like he's good at.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think this is a necessity. This goes back to what you were talking about earlier with Bama expanding their staff at one point in time, and they had more people to do more stuff. I think it's necessary now to, instead of putting, this ridiculously large analyst staff together, you're putting together a really big staff to help you recruit. because that's where the majority of your time is going to get eaten up. And let the guys who are on the field be on the field coaches, and figure out how to, prep their own game plans for the most part. You give them an assistant and let them get out there and go to work. So we'll see. All right, let's transition really quickly because I do want to talk a little basketball really quickly. Auburn was able to beat the brakes off of South Carolina yesterday.
Man.
I had a chance to talk about it on the Lobtown reaction show, but you all's thoughts on the game last night and what Auburn has left on their schedule. Kentucky coming up this weekend.
I always thought that as we looked at the schedule, we talked about it last week, Ike, and we were saying, well, what would be disappointing? And we were looking at the schedule, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to give them a pass if they lose at Florida because it's an away game. And I'm going to give them a pass if they lose at Tennessee. It's an away game. I expect to win every home game, and that has never been more the case than last night. It is a scientific gambling fact for all my sports bettors out there. When a team comes off of a loss, an embarrassing loss, they are chomping at the bit to get back on that court and prove themselves, especially if they're coming home to prove themselves. It is why I think we lost the game to Bama at Bama, because they had just gotten their ass whipped to Tennessee by 20 points. So they get to come home. They got all the motivation because they had been on a little streak and they had been all right, but they get to come home and prove themselves. Like, that was a fluke. I can play better than that. I can shoot better than that. And then you give the crowd boost that a home team gives them. I don't think we'll really know how good anybody is until conference tournaments and the SEC, the NCAA tournament. Because we are not as bad as we played at Florida, but I also don't know if we're as good as we played against South Carolina. Like, that was crazy. That was crazy. Like, we've seen those players play that well at different points in time, but to have Broom and Jay Will and Trey ball like that to that extent.
Splash Bros, you know what I'm saying?
Splash Bros. They can do it. It's always good to see them play as well as you think they can play. Like, we can be this good. I don't believe that we are that good every night, game in, game out. But what we have to find, I think, is that equilibrium where more players, like Jay Will can't have the drought games like he had at Florida, at Bama. Like, that's really the thing that's changing the most here. When Jay Will is the Batman Robin duo with Broom, we're going to be elite. If he's not, we're not going to be elite. We can be a good team that can still beat some of these teams. But what is it for Jay Will that's going to stabilize him on the road? That's really the question we have to ask. He's got the size, he's got the skill, and he's got so much of his game. I feel like he's picking his spots better and he's making smart decisions. But something doesn't click on the road for Jay Will. And I think if he solves that, I don't know what helps him find it, but if he can find that consistently, now I think we're a Final Four team.
I think when the two guys are playing at the top, I wouldn't say Batman and Robin. I'd probably say Batman and Superman, because Batman and Robin aren't on the same playing field when it comes to fighting. I'm a nerd. I can pull up facts about that. But whenever Jay Will is on, he is just like Superman. He is just out of nowhere, dunking on folks, making threes.
I mean, it is a super team at that point in time. It's not like a dynamic duo. It is, what's the DC equivalent, since we're doing DC? It's the Justice League.
And away games are Jay Will's kryptonite. He doesn't play as well whenever he's not in Neville Arena. And I will say, Neville Arena is going to have probably a louder environment than we've seen thus far. Because
I like how you're continuing this metaphor right now, Dylan. You continue to cook, my good guy. Continue to cook.
As someone who's been on the front lines of Pearlville, back in its early contingency of when it was more primitive and we were all cavemen trying to find our way through what was a line. If you've never experienced Pearlville, Tar has written a great article that won an award. I'll shout him out for that. You're going to have a bunch of college kids who are going to be a little sleep deprived, who are probably not going to be well showered. I will say the smell of Pearlville still reigns in my nose sometimes. I smell it sometimes. Like, oh God,
that does not sound appealing at all.
It's Vietnam flashbacks. I swear up and down, if Kentucky would have won that game in 2022, I don't think the students would have been seated very long and let Kentucky back to the locker rooms. But you're going to have that environment again. You're going to have those kids. It's already spanning around the arena at this point. There are tents up. Pearlville is now a functional like Mecca City now. You can't beat that environment. I don't care if Antonio Reeves is that good. I don't care if Ty Washington is playing or not. You can't beat that level of environment. This is Metropolis to Jay Will's Superman. This is Gotham City to Janai Broom's Batman. Neville Arena is where good teams go to die against Auburn.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a slow death of the Wildcats on Sunday. And hopefully this Auburn team can go ahead and close out the season undefeated at home, because this, in my opinion, is the last real home test that they're going to have. The rest of the teams, they should be at home. I mean, and that's no disrespect to these other teams. I just don't think that any team who can't score really well should beat Auburn in Neville Arena. Like, it just shouldn't happen. And the remaining teams on Auburn's home schedule outside of Kentucky are not teams that score very well. So we'll see what happens.
Well, let me ask y'all this
good
real
win
quick.
last night. Go ahead.
Oh, so what do y'all think of Aiden's progress from when he first moved to the second unit to now? And do you think it's something where he can be a reliable scorer by the time we hit the tourney? Or is this just there's probably a hard ceiling on him until year 2?
Is it progress? Are we calling it progress?
I think that there are elements of his game that have progressed. I think his shooting has regressed from what it was early in the season. But I think there are other elements of his game that he's actually gotten better at. But he still has a lot of work that he needs to do to be at the 5-star caliber player that he came in as. And I don't really know what the issue is, honestly, because he's getting good looks. It's not as if, they're doing a great job of contesting against him and he's just getting harassed. Like, they are playing more physical with him out on the perimeter. But he's just not making shots, man. And I don't know what the reasoning is.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope he can do more for us. We didn't see Trey really pick it up until later in the season, but also Trey didn't really get a chance.
I was about to say, Trey didn't play a lot of minutes. I see a lot of people making that comparison, like, well, Trey Donaldson took some time. We don't know what Trey was earlier in the year. He was barely playing. In fact, Trey had good games earlier in the season, pre-SEC play, when you talk about that West Coast trip when, there were guys who were hurt and he got minutes. He played well in those times. So I think Trey Donaldson just kind of always was that guy. He just never got the minutes to prove it. So I don't even like the comparisons between Trey Donaldson's quote unquote ascension towards the end of the year. He got more minutes at the end of the year. Now, that may have something to do with whether or not Coach Pearl trusted him more later. Right. But it wasn't, I don't think, because Trey Donaldson wasn't always Trey Donaldson.
Right. I agree with that. Yeah. Who knows, man?
Any other thoughts on this before we get out of here?
Auburn 85, Kentucky 80.
5-point win. I'd love to see a close victory for Auburn at some point in time, just to prove that they could do it.
If anything, I'd say Auburn gets back into the 90s because we did it against the last two home teams we played. So, we get to 100, of course, against South Carolina. I think we end up in the 90s. I don't think Florida gets past the 70s. Big win.
All right. Well, we will see. We'll definitely have more on this game tomorrow. Sunday before that game tips off. So looking forward to talking to you guys in Lobtown when we preview that game. But we are going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, make sure you're doing all the necessary, which is sharing the content with somebody out there at the War Rapport. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and give us that good follow on social media. Dylan, where do people need to follow you before we get out of here, man?
Well, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I think I'm a funny guy, so I put up funny tweets. It's at your boy the Tank, at YABOI the Tank. Also, have me on the College Loop as well, every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. We just had an episode come out this morning where we talked about the guys with the most to prove before spring practice starts up. So check it out there.
All right. Well, we are going to get out of here. We appreciate you guys dropping in with us. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle. Got it.